Hello and welcome to our podcast today, where we're joined from winners from the awards from last year that will hopefully inspire you to enter this year and help you find out a little bit about their winning entry. So today we are lucky enough to be joined by the winners of our Best Approach to Risk Mitigation category, and that was Sunrise Senior Living. And we're joined here by Christine, who is Director of Procurement. So Chris, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us along, Emma, and hopefully I can sort of help explain what the entry was that we submitted to actually become winners, which we're really proud of.
Brilliant. So I'll hand over to you, Chris, and you can do your presentation, and then I'll pop back and we'll ask some more questions at the end. So over to you.
Thank you very much. This is probably the first presentation I've done that doesn't have lots of finance figures in it, so looking forward to it. The first line there basically says it all. This was our team hit one of the biggest media concerns of 2020 around the pandemic and the supply of PPE. We all saw the news, we all saw that the NHS was running low or virtually out, and there were struggles to get it in the country. It was paramount to keep our residents safe, our team members safe, and our business safe. Being a frontline care home provider, looking after 3,300 vulnerable residents with over 5,000 staff, PPE sourcing and continued supply was paramount, and the risk to all those was not only life-threatening but business-threatening too. You might say, why didn't we have all this stuff in place already? Why the risk? Valid question, but a lot of the PPE that we had to purchase for the pandemic, we didn't actually have in normal use. We never purchased before. We didn't use it. We didn't use face masks. We now have 3 different types of face masks in our business, and we definitely didn't use visors. So all of this was not normally required by our business for day-to-day operations. Stocks of the enhanced PPE through our normal supply chains ran dry as the NHS cleared the shelves for their own requirements, resulting in our significant need, and all the normal contracted avenues were unable to supply. There was a high risk in a short period of time of not having enough PPE, as was covered in all the news broadcasts, meaning our 5,000 staff and 3,300 residents would be at risk. We have 46 sites as well, so we had to divide whatever we could get quite thinly. This would also have additional massive reputational risk on the company as well as financial. Most PPE is made outside of the UK, and the usual route is via sea freight. So the risk of delayed supply and again of the company running out of supply. And the majority of the world's PPE used to come from China. And again, that's where the pandemic originated. And currently it was in lockdown with all of its PPE factories closed. So the only PPE that was coming in at that time was what was already left prior to the actual need, which was very low quantities. Our approach had to be lean and agile. We only have two in our team of procurement at Sunrise Senior Living. So we're already pretty lean already, but it did help us to be very agile and reactive in this pandemic situation. We applied leverage to the supply base for market intelligence. Initially, we contacted all our suppliers that were invited to the care supplies tender back in January 2019. This yielded some success, but they were quickly cleared out of stocks, and soon we're only supplying companies contracted to them. But it did buy us a week of supplies of PPE. Providing detailed post-tender briefings to unsuccessful suppliers also kept them on side, which meant they were still willing to supply us smaller amounts, if not exactly what we needed, but it kept them on side and very definitely well worth doing. We then contacted the whole of the Sunrise supplier base because we realised our original supplies were not going to be fit for purpose, as it were. And regardless of what they provided, to ascertain if they had any routes to PPE provision. A few companies came back with offers of small amounts, unsustainable amounts, and this was quickly procured by us to buy us further time. Not PPE, but for example, toilet rolls were in short supply at the time. That was massive headlines all across the news because of panic buying. I quickly established stationery suppliers also had quite decent supplies. So I managed to clear out 3 different stationery suppliers, including our own, which got us ahead of the game until proper stocks came in. And again, our light bulb company had to supply gloves. Well, they did until we bought them all. We pushed our suppliers for alternative contacts as well. A couple of our suppliers had contacts in Poland, and we quickly forged links with alternative certified sources for PPE. Now, the certified bit is the really important part because there was a lot of bogus PPE coming into the country that was not fit for purpose. Mainly it was face masks and sanitizer, and using 2 possibly unlikely suppliers, one being our white goods supplier and the other one a stationery supplier, we managed to get serious supplies coming. The situation was time critical, so we arranged for items initially to be flown into Heathrow rather than transported by land to speed up the process, as the initial need to supply outweighed the need to reduce the cost. Within 24 hours of being tasked with managing the risk, we'd solved the problem and secured ongoing supplies for Sunrise UK, and also managed to secure a startup stock for our parent company, Sunrise, in the US, to buy them time to establish their own supply chains. We were approached by opportunists galore and inundated with offers of supply of PPE from anyone who saw this as the next gold rush. It really was anyone that thought they could make money of it sent me an email, I believe. We were getting upwards of 300 emails a day and quickly had to validate stocks that were offered to us were actually in the UK, a majority weren't. Pricing was fair and the products were certified and they were fit companies to actually supply us. This yielded a few gems, with the odd manufacturer gaining large orders from an initial cold call. Normally a cold call will result in less than 1% of purchases because we follow strict procurement guidelines and most of our supplies are contracted. But from one of these, we unearthed a local supplier of full face visors that was a plastics manufacturer that was able to manufacture in the UK at a fraction of the cost most other suppliers could. Our first batch, we paid, I think, nearly £4 a visor. This manufacturer was supplying them to us at 75 pence. Initial order of 100,000 of these was delivered to all sites within a week, which was really what we needed. The outcomes, this was one of those procurement initiatives where there had to be only one outcome. Failure was not an option, and we had to deliver the right amount of PPE and the right PPE, despite the sometimes changing guidelines on a daily basis of what we needed to provide. This was essential for our residents, our team members, and our business. To date, that's been achieved and more, with support also being provided from many other organisations who have put out distress calls for stock. We established longer-term solutions for rapid deployment, and despite the widespread negative press about PPE shortages, we were able to source and set up supply hubs within each region, which in turn held a reserve stock. This proved useful and essential around weekends and bank holidays, where distribution by normal methods would have led to delays and could have caused massive problems. This meant we had stock within 1 hour of all of our 46 sites. Today, each home has sufficient supply now for 2 weeks. We also have another week held in our hub still, and we also have a further 4 weeks now supply held at 3 different suppliers to cover for eventualities and obviously disparities over Christmas. We didn't expect the level of positivity around what we were doing. After all, we are just the procurement team, and we've gone from previously being the department that quietly gets on with our jobs and gets the odd good job or thanks to having endless emails of praise. It was unnerving. It actually did highlight to us that the sites were really worried. They were listening to the negative press about PPE. They were worried we were going to run out. But obviously, we're working in the relative safety of our homes compared to the team members who've got to go work frontline environments, which was another motivation for us to actually make sure we kept them safe. During the initial stages of the pandemic, the UK procurement team for Sunrise also able to support our parent company, Sunrise US, which with its 300 sites and 30,000 residents, were struggling to get hold of any face masks at all. Within 10 days, and once we'd established our first link up with Poland, we were able to get 300,000 face masks flown out to America, where we managed the transportation, the customs, the duty requirements, and they were delivered there to support the 300 sites in the US until they could actually establish localized supply chain, which luckily they did. Due to the early success of sourcing the PPE, we were asked by our owners to support other care providers they were linked to. In the first wave of the pandemic, we helped over 12 other care providers with PPE supplies without adding risk to our own supply chain, often using the hubs to provide support that they needed. If anything, this action has helped bolster our ability to buy better, with increased volumes now linked to our business and professional processes, and raised the credibility of procurement as a vital asset to the business. Further testament of the procurement team's success, 3 weeks into the pandemic, I was offered the chance to increase the procurement team size. This was something that previously had been rejected, but now felt necessary by the executive leadership team to support the business smoothly out of the other side of the current situation whilst we try to establish a new normal, something we're still trying to establish. Finally, our challenges and logistics and utilising suppliers for PPE wasn't as straightforward as placing a normal order and following established processes. Some suppliers had access to stock but couldn't manage distribution, so managing the whole supply chain became the only solution in many instances. When we sourced the full-face visors that I mentioned earlier, the supplier was based in the UK, a plastics company, but used to dealing with trade only and supplying large orders, so not geared up for arranging smaller deliveries to multiple locations. To get around this, we utilised our stationery company, who were geared up to deal with multiple locations and handling large amounts of stock. And they were also, not only did they manage to get the distribution to all our sites and split down the pallet deliveries that they were receiving, they're also happy to hold stock on the shelf for call off, which meant we could build up a buffer of reserve stock, not that it stayed on the shelf so long initially. We increased other departments' agility, and we had to. Previously, a challenge was whenever we signed up a new company, it used to take 5 days to get them on board. So we were in a position to accept invoices into our system and actually pay them, due to the process being managed in the US with multiple processes to follow. Due to our support in the US with procuring their first batch of face masks, which they couldn't source, we called in as many favors as we could and got this process down to just a few hours. Usually we were sending requests over in the morning, and then when we finished our day at 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, America was still working till at least 9, and supplies were put on the same day. This was essential as soon, early on in the pandemic, orders became cash with order. Credit was going out the window. We spent 15 times what we do in 3 months with our white goods supplier than we normally do in a whole year. We needed to keep their supply chains open by making sure their cash flow was good. So we needed to make sure payments went through really quickly. Supply validation was also going to be a challenge, with the extra risk involved with payment in advance and potentially new suppliers. The risk of the goods not turning up at all and companies vanishing with our money. To mitigate against this, we carried out as many checks as possible, from credit checks, Google Street Map searches, to actually validate that the buildings existed, that they were claiming they were there. Where possible, we got references, and to date, everything that has been ordered has turned up as per spec and requirements. By getting ourselves up to speed with required certification and information around items required, this also helped us identify who did not know what they were selling, some of the opportunists out there, and enabled us to buy safely and with the correct certification that we needed. Again, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. It's a bit difficult in this instance because we didn't know what we were dealing with to start with. And we were caught on the back foot in wave one, and previously had never used the PPE, as I mentioned before, but we reacted quickly, and the aim is not to be in that position again, learning from our mistakes or learning from a new situation. As well as managing the current supply chain requirements of PPE, we've already planned for potential future pandemics, which hopefully don't happen, as well as managing our supplies via 3 different distribution partners to cover for 2 failures, and also worked out well over Christmas, where 2 of them closed for 10 days for the Christmas break. We were still left with 1 open, so it managed that situation well. Each of our 46 sites is having a pandemic box created, which will be stored with our stationery supplier, and that will contain enough PPE to last for up to 4 weeks, which will buy us plenty of time if any future pandemic hits and supply runs dry, and not allow us to be in the situation that we were in before. The Sunrise strategy is always to utilise professional procurement processes, and that pay dividends. Suppliers previously involved in tenders, RFPs, benchmarking exercises have always had full briefings following the process for both successful and unsuccessful entries. This led to a lot more supply during the pandemic from goodwill gained by doing so. Plus, the situation has really shown us which suppliers are prepared to go above and beyond, something that can't always be seen or evaluated in a tender or benchmarking process, and we're trying to establish ways we can include the above and beyond in future tenders. And finally, it doesn't pay to skimp on procurement, and it really is an important thing for us that the pandemic taught our company, and it'd be beneficial to have a larger procurement team to provide additional support.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. Honestly, I mean, I've heard from so many people that PPE was like dealing with the Wild West
Yeah, no,
during
it
the
was.
height of the pandemic. I think what came out from your submission really was um, thinking outside the box and thinking of all those creative ways where you could source materials quickly to the instant issue. So, get thinking of all those suppliers that probably had stuff weaseled away that you could get to. But not only that, but putting steps in place and future proofing to so you're not in that immediate issue again. So I mean that really came through, and then for such a small team to enable what you did for your own organization and help others, massively commendable. So very
Thank
well
you.
done on your win. It was
Really appreciate that.
really shining example, and it's great that it's shown so much, shone a spotlight at procurement and raised the profile of it in your organization. And I hope that winning the award helped some of that too. Did you
Yeah.
share the success internally?
Yes. No, that was amazing. Like I say, we entered the competition, and we were blown away to be shortlisted. And I thought that's it. That's as good as it gets. But really happy with that, and my CFO and the CEO really happy with it. And then when we won, it was just unbelievable. It was, yeah. I wish I'd entered earlier.
What motivated you to enter in the first place? Had you entered a CIPS award before?
No, I'd entered other awards, at the food service Katie's Awards. There's a procurement award there, and we got shortlisted, and we got beaten by CH&Co, which is a very large restaurant group, with a massive team. I think about 30 people went up on the stage. And then I'd always noticed the CIPS Awards being emailed around, and I'd always clicked on it and looked at it, and I'd seen previous shortlistings, and you tend to have lots of large national companies, global banks, and companies like that, and it felt a bit daunting. I myself I was a bit late to CIPS, and I actually got my MCIPS in 2019. That in itself, once I got qualified for that, gave me the confidence to actually look a bit harder. And this year, when the email came around about entering, I thought we could have a very topical entry here that fits one of the categories. Search through the categories, nail down which one we wanted to enter. And yeah, previously we potentially wouldn't have entered, but would definitely enter again. And anyone
Excellent.
else should do, even however small your team is.
Well, no, and that goes to show, and I think it's not how big your team is, and I think those smaller organisations, in doing the amount of work and making the impact that you did on such a small team is often what really blows away the judges. So yeah, I would definitely reiterate that message. No matter how big your organisation is, or how big or small your procurement team is, it's those projects that really make the judges go wow, and yours certainly did make us all go wow. So very
Thank you.
well
And
done.
and although it is very different this year in the fact it was virtual, that was done really professionally. That's really well done for SIPS for pulling that one out. Seamless transition of all the awards.
Great.
Uh,
Well, I hope you managed to get some time to celebrate in a virtual way with your team and your
yes,
organization.
it's very much virtual.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And we hopefully look forward to reading some more submissions from Sunrise Senior Living very soon. So,
Definitely watch this
congratulations.
space.
Excellent. We look forward to that. So, anyone that's thinking of entering, I hope this has inspired you. Like I say, no matter how big or small your organization or your team is, go onto the website, download the toolkit on how to enter, look at those categories and think which one stands out for you, and think of those projects that really make the procurement team have done over and above what's usually expected of them. So really think of those innovative and creative projects that you've been involved with. So thank you very much, and just look forward to reading everyone's submission who enters this year, and wish you all good luck.